He signed up thinking he'd host an alien ambassador for a few weeks. He never imagined he'd fall deeply in love with someone who wasn't even from his world. David never thought his life would turn out this way. He was just a regular scientist working at a space research station, studying rocks from other planets and writing boring reports that nobody really read. His days were simple and predictable. Wake up, check the equipment, analyze samples, eat freeze-dried food, and sleep in a tiny cabin that barely had room for a bed. That was his routine for 3 years straight. But everything changed when Earth made contact with beings from another world. It wasn't like the movies where aliens arrived in massive ships and started blasting cities. No, it was quiet and peaceful. They came from a distant moon, floating in small crystalline vessels that looked like they were made of frozen starlight. These beings called themselves the Luminari, and they were nothing like humans had imagined. When the governments of Earth and the Luminari decided to build trust between their worlds, they came up with an unusual plan. They wanted to create bonds between individuals from both species, real connections. The kind that goes beyond political meetings and formal handshakes. They called it the Unity Program, and they needed volunteers. David signed up thinking he'd just be hosting someone for a few weeks. Maybe showing them around the station, teaching them about human culture, sharing meals in the cafeteria. He imagined it would be like having a foreign exchange student but from space. Simple enough, right? Wrong. So very wrong. 3 weeks after he volunteered, his supervisor called him into the main office. The woman looked nervous, shuffling papers on her desk and avoiding eye contact. That's when David knew something was different about this assignment. The Luminari have a specific way of building alliances, she explained slowly. They don't just send ambassadors or delegates. They practice something called bonding ceremonies. It's their most sacred tradition. David nodded, still not understanding where this was going. You'll be paired with one of their people, a young woman named Lyra, and according to their customs, you'll be considered bonded partners. It's legal under both our laws and theirs. Everyone has consented. But David, this isn't just a roommate situation. In their culture, this is as serious as marriage. The words hit him like a meteor. Marriage to an alien? He barely knew how to maintain a relationship with humans. He'd been single for 4 years, because he was too awkward at parties and spent most of his time looking at rocks under microscopes. Now they wanted him to bond with someone from another world? But David had already signed the papers. He'd made a commitment, and honestly, a part of him was curious. What would it be like? Could two completely different beings really connect? The day Lyra arrived, David spent 6 hours cleaning his quarters. He moved things around 12 times trying to make the space look welcoming. He put up some pictures of Earth, arranged his books neatly, and even found some flowers from the station's greenhouse. His hands were shaking the entire time. When the airlock door opened and she stepped through, David forgot how to breathe. Lyra was small, maybe reaching his shoulder if she stood on her toes. Her skin had this incredible shimmer to it, like someone had dusted her with crushed pearls. It changed colors slightly depending on how the light hit her, shifting from pale silver to soft blue. Her eyes were large and violet, with no visible pupils, just swirling depths that seemed to hold entire galaxies. And behind her, folded against her back, were wings. Actual wings. They were translucent, like dragonfly wings, but bigger and more delicate. She moved toward him with uncertain steps, looking around the corridor with wide eyes. Everything must have seemed so strange to her. The harsh fluorescent lights, the metal walls, the artificial gravity that probably felt different from her moon's environment. When she stopped in front of him, David realized he should say something, anything. But his brain had completely stopped working. He just stood there like a statue, staring at this ethereal being who was apparently going to be his bonded partner. Lyra tilted her head, studying him with those incredible eyes. Then she spoke, her voice coming through a small translator device attached to her wrist. The device gave her words a slightly musical quality, like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. I am honored to join with you, David. I will try to be a worthy companion to you. Her voice was soft and nervous. She was scared. This powerful, beautiful, otherworldly being was just as terrified as he was. Somehow that made David feel a little better. I'm honored too, he managed to say, his voice cracking slightly. Welcome to the station. Welcome to my home. Our home. I mean, if you want it to be, I'll try my best to make you comfortable. Lyra's skin flickered with tiny lights like stars appearing on a twilight sky. He didn't know what that meant, but he hoped it was good. He led her to their quarters, explaining things as they walked. The gravity system, the air recycling, the schedule for meals. She listened carefully, asking questions through her translator. Some of her questions were simple. Others made him realize how different their worlds really were. "Why does everything have corners?" she asked, touching the sharp edge of a doorframe. David had never thought about it. "I guess we just build things that way." "Is it different where you're from?" "Everything flows," she said quietly. "Curves and circles. Corners feel like they might cut." When they reached his quarters, Lyra stepped inside and stopped. She looked at everything with a mixture of curiosity and confusion. The bed puzzled her the most. She circled it twice, touching the blankets with her 3-fingered hands. "What is this?" she asked. "It's where we sleep. A bed. You lie down on it and rest." She looked genuinely confused. "Lie down? On something flat?" That's when David realized he had no idea how Luminari slept. He felt stupid for not researching more before she arrived. "How do your people rest?" he asked. Lyra's wings spread slightly and she gestured with her hands, trying to explain. "We suspend ourselves in cocoons made of light fiber. We float while we rest, supported by the weaving." David looked at his regular human bed and felt completely unprepared for this. They couldn't even agree on basic furniture. How were they supposed to build a life together? But Lyra stepped closer to the bed and sat down carefully on the edge. The mattress compressed under her weight and she looked surprised. Then she pressed her hand into it a few times, watching it bounce back. A sound came from her, high and musical. She was laughing. "It's soft," she said, delight in her voice, "like sitting on a cloud that doesn't drift away." David couldn't help but smile. Maybe this wouldn't be so impossible after all. They'd just have to figure things out together, one strange moment at a time. As the station's artificial lights dimmed to simulate evening, David showed Lyra where everything was in their quarters. The bathroom confused her. The kitchen made her nervous. The closet seemed pointless since she didn't wear clothes like humans did. Just a simple wrap of shimmering fabric that seemed to be part decorative, part functional. When night finally came, they stood there in the quiet room, both uncertain about what came next. David had set up a sleeping bag on the floor for himself, wanting to give Lyra the bed. But she looked at the arrangement with concern. "Did I take your resting place?" she asked, worry making her wings flutter slightly. No. I want you to be comfortable. The bed is yours." "But bonded pairs share space," she said, confusion clear in her voice. "Do humans not stay close to their partners?" David felt his face getting hot. How did he explain human customs about taking things slow? About personal space and privacy? About the fact that they'd just met and didn't really know each other yet? "We do," he said carefully. "But we usually take time to get comfortable with each other first. To become friends before we become anything else." Lyra's skin dimmed slightly, losing some of its shimmer. "I have offended you. I do not understand your ways yet." "I'm sorry." "No, you didn't offend me at all," David said quickly. "I just want us both to feel comfortable. There's no rush for anything. We have time to figure this out together." Her skin brightened again, just a little. "Time," she repeated. Yes, time would be good. They settled into an awkward arrangement. Lyra sat on the bed. Her wings spread out behind her because folding them for too long made them ache. David sat in the chair nearby, suddenly feeling exhausted from the emotional weight of the day, and then they started talking. Really talking. That first night, neither of them slept much. Instead, they talked until the station's artificial dawn began to brighten their quarters. It started with simple questions, the kind you ask when you're trying to fill awkward silence. But somehow it became something more. David asked about her home moon, and Lyra's entire being seemed to light up. She described crystalline forests that sang in the wind, oceans that floated in the sky held by some kind of natural magnetic field, and cities built from grown light rather than constructed materials. Her people didn't build things the way humans did. They cultivated them, growing their homes and tools from living energy. "It sounds like magic," David said, genuinely amazed. "What is magic?" Lyra asked, tilting her head. That led to a long conversation about human concepts and beliefs. David found himself explaining things he'd never really thought about before. Why humans liked stories, why they created art, why they felt the need to explore space even though it was dangerous and expensive. Lyra listened to everything with intense focus, her violet eyes never leaving his face. Every so often her skin would pulse with different colors, which he was starting to realize was how her people expressed emotion. Soft blue when she was curious, warm gold when something pleased her, pale silver when she was uncertain. Your people are very loud, she observed at one point. David wasn't sure if that was a criticism.
Loud how?
Inside, she said, pressing a hand to her chest. So many feelings all at once, all strong. Humans feel everything so intensely. It's overwhelming, but also fascinating. Can you sense emotions? David asked, suddenly worried about what she might be picking up from him. Not exactly, Lyra explained. But I can see them in your face, hear them in your voice. Your species broadcasts everything outward. My people are more contained. We share feelings deliberately through our light patterns. But you humans just radiate everything all the time. David thought about that. He'd never considered himself particularly emotional or expressive. But maybe compared to the Luminari, all humans were like open books. As the hours passed, they discovered small things about each other. Lyra loved learning about Earth's water cycle, fascinated by rain and rivers. David was amazed by how Luminari absorbed nutrients through a special mist rather than eating solid food. She found human music overwhelming at first, all those sounds layered together. He found her people's light art beautiful, but couldn't figure out how they created such intricate patterns. Around what would have been 3 a.m. by Earth time, Lyra's wings started drooping. She was tired but seemed reluctant to stop talking, as if she was afraid the connection they'd built would disappear if they stopped. You should rest, David said gently. We have plenty of time for more conversation. Time, Lyra repeated, that word seeming to comfort her. Yes, we have time. She lay down on the bed, her wings spreading across it like a living blanket. David turned to his sleeping bag on the floor. But before he could settle in, he felt something soft drape over his shoulders. One of Lyra's wings had extended, covering him like a protective shield. Is this acceptable? She asked quietly. In my culture, we offer our wings to those we wish to protect. It is a sign of trust. David felt a lump form in his throat. This delicate being, who was probably just as scared and confused as he was trying to protect him. It's more than acceptable, he managed to say. Thank you. They fell asleep like that, connected by the gossamer touch of her wing. Two beings from different worlds finding unexpected comfort in each other's presence. The next few days were an interesting adventure in cultural exchange. Every meal was a negotiation. David tried to explain breakfast, lunch, and dinner, but Lyra's people didn't divide their day that way. They absorbed nutrition whenever they felt depleted, which could be 3 times a day or once every 2 days, depending on their activity level. The station's cafeteria became a source of endless confusion. Lyra was fascinated by the concept of different flavored foods, since her nutrient mist was always the same. David brought her into the cafeteria during off hours when it was mostly empty, not wanting to overwhelm her with crowds of curious humans. He made himself a simple sandwich, and Lyra watched the entire process with intense interest. The bread, the meat, the cheese, the lettuce. Each component seemed to amaze her. You combine so many different things? She asked. And then consume it all together? That's cooking, David explained. We mix ingredients to create new flavors. Show me more, she insisted. So David found himself giving cooking demonstrations to an alien in an empty space station cafeteria at midnight. He scrambled eggs, made pasta, prepared a salad. Lyra couldn't eat any of it, but she wanted to understand everything. She touched the ingredients, smelled them, asked a million questions about where each item came from. Your planet must be very rich, she said softly, to have so many different forms of nutrition. I never really thought about it that way, David admitted. I guess we do have a lot of variety. Lyra's skin flickered with a sad pale blue. My world is not as diverse. We lost many of our resources in a great catastrophe many cycles ago. That is why we seek alliances with other worlds. We need to learn, to grow, to find new ways of sustaining ourselves. David suddenly understood the Unity program in a new light. This wasn't just about politics or cultural exchange. The Luminari needed help. They were reaching out across space because their own world was struggling. We'll figure it out together, he said. That's what partners do, right? Lyra's skin bloomed with warm gold, and for the first time since she'd arrived, she smiled. Her smile was different from human smiles, more of a soft brightening of her features, but it was unmistakably joyful. They developed routines. Every morning, David would wake up early and prepare his coffee while Lyra would absorb her nutrient mist from a special chamber the station had prepared for her. They'd meet at the observation deck, where huge windows showed the beauty of space and the distant Earth below. Lyra loved watching Earth rotate, seeing the clouds move, the oceans shimmer, the lights of cities at night. "It's so alive," she whispered one morning, her hand pressed against the cold glass, "so full of energy and movement." "Does your moon look different?" David asked. "Everything is slower there. Quieter. We move through time differently. Your world spins so fast, everything changes so quickly. It's exciting but also frightening." David stood beside her, watching Earth turn below them. He tried to imagine seeing it for the first time. This blue and green marble floating in darkness. It must have been overwhelming. "Change can be scary," he agreed. "But it can also be good. Look at us. A few days ago we were strangers from different worlds. Now we're having coffee together and watching sunrises." "Coffee," Lyra repeated, testing the word. "That dark liquid you consume that smells bitter but makes you energetic." "Exactly." David laughed. "You're learning," but not everything was smooth. There were moments of confusion and frustration. Lyra's wings would spread involuntarily when she was nervous, which was often. They'd knock things over or hit walls in the narrow corridors. She'd apologize profusely each time, trying to keep them folded tighter, which David could tell caused her discomfort. "Don't hurt yourself trying to fit into human spaces," he told her, after she'd spent an entire day with her wings painfully compressed. "We'll figure out how to make the space work for you." They rearranged their quarters, moving furniture to create more wing room. David requisitioned some additional space from the station commander, explaining that luminary physiology required more room. The commander, curious about how the Unity program was progressing, approved it immediately. Their quarters became a hybrid of two worlds. Human furniture arranged in flowing patterns instead of rigid lines, soft lighting that could shift colors to match Lyra's needs, a suspended hammock-style bed that David had somehow convinced the engineering team to install, so Lyra could sleep in a way that felt more natural to her. "You changed everything for me," Lyra observed one evening, looking around their transformed space. "It's our space now," David said simply. "It should work for both of us." That night something shifted between them. They were still sleeping separately, Lyra in her hammock and David in his bed, but the distance felt less necessary. They'd stopped being strangers and had become something else. Friends, maybe, or partners learning to be partners. Lyra extended her wing toward him as he settled into bed. It had become their nightly ritual, this connection across the space between them. "Good night, David," she said softly. "Good night, Lyra." As David drifted off to sleep, he realized he hadn't thought about his old solitary life in days. This new reality, strange as it was, had started to feel like home. Everything fell apart on the fourth day. David woke up to silence. The kind of silence that feels wrong, that makes your stomach drop even before you understand why. Normally, he'd hear the soft humming sound Lyra made while resting, a gentle vibration that had become comforting in its consistency, but that morning there was nothing. He sat up quickly, looking toward her hammock. Lyra was there, but something was very wrong. Her skin, usually shimmering with life and color, had turned a dull gray. Her wings hung limp, no longer glowing with their subtle inner light. And her breathing, which was normally almost silent, came in harsh, labored gasps. "Lyra." David threw off his blankets and rushed to her side. "Lyra, what's wrong?" She tried to speak, but only a weak sound came out. Her translator device flickered weakly on her wrist, struggling to function. Her violet eyes found his face, and in them he saw pain and fear. David's training kicked in. He hit the emergency call button on the wall panel, requesting immediate medical assistance. Then he carefully touched Lyra's shoulder, trying to assess her condition. Her skin felt wrong under his fingers, dry and brittle where it should have been smooth and cool. "Hold on," he told her, though he wasn't sure she could understand him. "Help is coming. Just hold on." The medical team arrived within minutes. Dr. Rodriguez, the station's head physician, came with 2 assistants and equipment. They'd been briefed on luminary physiology before Lyra's arrival, but this was their first real emergency involving an alien patient. "What happened?" Dr. Rodriguez asked, immediately running scanners over Lyra's body. "I don't know. She was fine last night. We went to sleep, and this morning I found her like this." The doctor's face grew serious as she read the scanner results. "Her respiratory system is failing. The oxygen exchange in her cells is way below normal levels. She looked at David. Has she mentioned any discomfort? Any problems with breathing? David thought back over the past few days. Had there been signs? Had Lyra tried to tell him something was wrong? Then he remembered small moments he'd dismissed. The way Lyra would pause sometimes, her hand on her chest. How she'd spent extra time in the bathroom with the door closed. The fact that her skin had seemed slightly less bright yesterday, though he'd attributed it to fatigue. She never said anything was wrong, David said, feeling guilt crush his chest. I should have noticed. I should have paid more attention. Don't blame yourself, Dr. Rodriguez said, but she was focused on Lyra. We need to figure out what's causing this. Her atmospheric requirements were supposed to be met by the station's standard life support. One of the assistants pulled up data on a tablet. According to the Luminary Embassy's files, they need a higher concentration of certain trace gases than humans. The standard atmosphere works for short periods, but extended exposure causes cellular degradation. David felt sick. They'd been poisoning her slowly since she arrived, and she hadn't said anything. Why? Why wouldn't she tell him she couldn't breathe properly? Dr. Rodriguez was already adjusting controls on a portable atmospheric unit. I'm going to flood this room with a supplemented air mixture. It should help stabilize her. Mist began to pour from the unit, filling the room with a slightly sweet-smelling fog. Within minutes, the change in Lyra was visible. Her breathing became less labored. Color started seeping back into her skin, replacing the awful gray with her natural pearl shimmer. Her eyes found David's again, and this time they were clearer, more focused. The translator on her wrist beeped, coming back online. I am sorry, were her first words. I did not mean to cause trouble. Sorry? David couldn't believe what he was hearing. Lyra, you were suffocating. Why didn't you tell me you couldn't breathe? She looked away, her wings trembling slightly. In my culture, when two beings bond, they should be able to sense each other's needs without words. The partner should know, should feel what the other requires. I thought if I spoke of my discomfort, it would mean our bond was weak, that I had failed. David felt his heart break a little. She'd been suffering in silence because of some cultural expectation that he didn't even know about. That's not how humans work, he said gently. We're not mind readers. We need words. We need communication. I understand that now, Lyra whispered. But I was afraid. What if you thought I was too difficult? Too much trouble? What if you decided bonding with me was a mistake? Dr. Rodriguez finished adjusting the atmospheric controls and stepped back. She needs to stay in this enriched environment for at least 48 hours. I'll have engineering install permanent atmospheric modification in your quarters. She looked at both of them seriously. You two need to talk. Really talk. About needs, expectations, everything. After the medical team left, David sat beside Lyra's hammock. The mist in the room made everything feel dreamlike and distant. He could see her getting stronger by the minute, color fully returning to her skin, her breathing becoming smooth and easy again. I thought I was doing everything right, David said quietly. I researched your people. I tried to make our quarters comfortable. But I missed the most basic thing. I'm so sorry, Lyra. You did nothing wrong, she insisted. I hid my discomfort from you. This failure is mine. It's not about failure, David said. It's about learning. We're from different worlds, Lyra. We're going to make mistakes. Both of us, but we can't hide things from each other. Not discomfort, not pain, not needs. That's what real partnership means, at least in human culture. Being honest, even when it's hard. Lyra was quiet for a long moment. Her skin flickered with colors he was starting to recognize. Pale blue for uncertainty, soft green for contemplation, hints of gold for something he thought might be affection or trust. On my world, she said slowly, we are taught that true bonding transcends words. That if the connection is real, you simply know what your partner needs. But maybe our peoples define bonding differently. Maybe, David agreed. Or maybe we can create our own definition. One that works for both of us. How? By talking. By sharing everything. Our needs, our fears, our frustrations, even the small stuff that seems silly or unimportant. David reached out carefully and took her three-fingered hand in his. From now on, we tell each other everything, deal? Lyra's skin bloomed with warm golden light, spreading from where they touched to cover her entire body. It was the brightest he'd ever seen her glow. Deal, she said. Though I do not fully understand that word. David couldn't help but smile. It means agreement, promise, commitment. Then yes, deal. They spent the rest of that day in their quarters, surrounded by the healing mist, talking about everything they'd been keeping inside. Lyra admitted that human food smells made her feel queasy sometimes, that the loud sounds of the station's machinery hurt her sensitive hearing, that she missed her family on her moon more than she'd wanted to admit. David confessed his fears too, that he didn't know how to be a good partner, that he was terrified of making another mistake that could hurt her, that sometimes he felt overwhelmed by the responsibility of being humanity's representative in this bond. "I am afraid too," Lyra admitted. "Every day I fear I will do something wrong, break some human custom I do not understand, embarrass you in front of your people. You could never embarrass me," David said firmly. "You're incredible, Lyra. You left everything you knew to come here to bond with a stranger from an alien world. That takes more courage than I could ever have. You think I am courageous?" Her skin flickered with surprise. "I know you are." As evening came and the station's lights dimmed, they made promises to each other. No more hiding discomfort. No more pretending everything was fine when it wasn't. No more assuming the other person could read minds or understand unspoken needs. "We will learn each other's languages," Lyra said. "Not just words, but meanings. The way humans express needs and the way Luminari do." "Together," David agreed. That night, for the first time since Lyra had arrived, David moved his bed closer to her hammock, not because anyone expected it, but because they both wanted the comfort of being near. Lyra's wing extended as always, draping over him, but this time it felt different, less like a gesture of obligation and more like genuine care. "Thank you for saving me," Lyra whispered into the darkness. "Thank you for trusting me enough to stay," David whispered back. In the healing mist, surrounded by the soft hum of atmospheric regulators, two beings from different worlds began to truly understand what it meant to be partners. Not perfect, not instinctive, but honest and willing to learn. It was a small moment in the vast universe. But it was theirs, and it was real, and it was enough. Life changed after what David privately thought of as the breathing incident. The station's engineering team spent 2 days completely overhauling their quarters, installing advanced atmospheric controls that could adjust the air composition to exactly what Lyra needed. They added humidity regulators, temperature controls, and even lighting systems that could mimic the natural light patterns of her moon. But the bigger change wasn't in their environment. It was in how they communicated. David made a list, an actual physical list written on a tablet that he kept updating. It included everything he learned about Lyra's needs, preferences, and discomforts. What sounds bothered her, which food smells made her feel sick, how much rest she needed, the temperature range she found comfortable. Her list for him was just as detailed, filled with observations about human behavior that surprised him. "You furrow your forehead when stressed," she'd noted, "and you forget to eat when focused on work." "I do that?" David asked, genuinely surprised. "Every time," Lyra confirmed, her skin flickering with amusement. They established routines that worked for both of them. Mornings started slowly, with David drinking his coffee and Lyra absorbing her nutrient mist. They'd sit together at their small table, talking about the day ahead or sometimes just enjoying comfortable silence. Lyra had started learning to read human facial expressions and body language, while David was getting better at interpreting her skin colors. "You're nervous today," he observed one morning, seeing the pale blue tint spreading across her shoulders. "I am scheduled to meet more humans," Lyra admitted. "A cultural exchange meeting in the main conference room. There will be many people." David knew that crowds overwhelmed her. Too many sounds, too many emotions, too much sensory input all at once. "Would it help if I came with you?" he offered. "You would do that?" Her skin brightened hopefully. "Of course. We're partners. That means I've got your back." "Got your back?" She tilted her head, confused. "It means I support you. I'm here for you." Lyra's wings fluttered with what he'd learned was pleasure. "I like that phrase. Got your back. Yes. I would like you to come." The meeting was exactly as overwhelming as they'd both anticipated. 20-something humans, all curious about the luminary, all asking questions at once. How did her wings work? What was her planet like? Could she explain their technology? Did she miss her home? David watched Lyra's skin gradually dim as she tried to answer everything. Her wings kept folding and unfolding nervously. He could see her getting more uncomfortable by the minute. "Okay, that's enough for today," David announced, stepping in. "Lyra needs to rest." Some people protested, wanting more time, but David was firm. He'd promised to have her back, and that's what he was doing. They left the conference room together, Lyra practically fleeing to the quieter corridors. "Thank you," she breathed, once they were alone. "I could not find the words to stop them." "You don't always have to be polite," David told her. "It's okay to say when something is too much." "But I am representing my people," Lyra said. "I must show we are agreeable, friendly, easy to work with." "You're representing yourself too," David insisted. "And you're allowed to have limits." They walked back to their quarters, and David could see Lyra physically relaxing as they moved away from the crowds. In their space, with its customized atmosphere and soft lighting, she spread her wings fully, letting them stretch after being held so carefully folded during the meeting. "Being here with you is easy," she said quietly, "but everything else feels like work. Constant work." "I can't imagine how exhausting that must be," David said. "Always monitoring yourself, always worried about doing something wrong." "Do you not feel the same?" Lyra asked. "You are also representing your species to me." David thought about that. "I guess I did at first. But somewhere along the way, I stopped thinking of you as an alien ambassador and started thinking of you as just Lyra, my weird roommate who doesn't eat solid food and knocks things over with her wings." Lyra made that musical sound that was her laugh. "Weird roommate. I like this better than bonded diplomatic partner." Their relationship grew in small, unexpected ways. Lyra discovered that she loved human documentaries, especially ones about oceans and sea creatures. David would find her watching the underwater footage for hours, her wings spread wide, her skin glowing with fascination. "Your world has so much water," she'd say in wonder. "It moves and flows and changes constantly. How do humans not spend all their time watching it?" David started showing her his work, explaining the rock samples he studied, the data he collected. He expected her to find it boring, but Lyra was genuinely interested. She'd ask questions that made him think about his research in new ways. "This crystal formation," she pointed to one of his samples, "it grew in layers over time, yes? Each layer tells a story of different conditions." "Exactly," David confirmed. "My people do something similar with light," Lyra explained. "We layer light in patterns, and each layer represents a moment in time. Art and history combined." "Can you show me?" David asked eagerly. That evening, Lyra created her first light art in their quarters. She positioned herself in the center of the room, closed her eyes, and began to glow. But this wasn't the simple color changes he'd seen before. This was intricate patterned light that seemed to pulse from her skin in waves. She projected it onto the walls, creating images that moved and shifted. David watched in awe as scenes appeared: a crystalline forest, a floating ocean, figures that might have been luminari, going about their lives. The patterns were so complex, so beautiful, that David felt tears forming in his eyes. "This is incredible," he whispered, not wanting to break her concentration. When Lyra finished, her skin was dim with exhaustion, but she looked pleased. "I have not created art since leaving my home. I was afraid I had forgotten how." "Why were you afraid to try?" David asked. "Because art for my people is deeply personal. It reveals what is inside you. Your feelings, your memories, your truth. I was not ready to show you those things, and now?" Lyra's skin flickered with that warm gold that David had come to love seeing. "Now I am ready. You have seen me at my weakest. You have saved my life. You have defended me and supported me. I trust you with my art because I trust you with myself." David felt something shift inside him. This wasn't just friendship anymore. This wasn't just two beings learning to coexist. This was something deeper, more meaningful. He was beginning to truly care for Lyra, not as a diplomatic responsibility, but as a person. A unique, wonderful person who happened to have wings and opalescent skin. "I have something to show you too," he said impulsively. David pulled up files on his tablet, photos and videos he'd never shown anyone. His family back on Earth, his childhood home. Videos of him playing piano before he moved to the space station. Memories he'd kept private because they felt too personal to share with colleagues. But Lyra wasn't just a colleague. She was becoming something much more important. They spent hours that night sharing their histories. Lyra described her family, the sibling clusters that Luminari formed, the teachers who'd trained her in light art and cultural diplomacy. David talked about his parents, who'd supported his dream of space exploration even when it meant rarely seeing him. About his sister, who thought living in space was ridiculous but called him every week anyway. "Do you miss them?" Lyra asked softly. Every day, David admitted. But I chose this life. What about you? Do you regret coming here? Lyra was quiet for a moment, her wings folding and unfolding thoughtfully. I was terrified when I volunteered. My family tried to talk me out of it. They said bonding with an unknown species was too dangerous, too uncertain. But I felt like I had to do something meaningful with my life, something that mattered beyond just myself. And now? David asked. Do you think it matters? Yes, Lyra said, her skin glowing softly. But not in the way I expected. I thought I would matter because I was building bridges between worlds. But what really matters is this. You and me. Learning to understand each other. That feels more important than any diplomatic achievement. David moved closer to where she sat in her hammock. I feel the same way. Their friendship deepened with each passing day. They developed inside jokes that no one else would understand. Lyra started imitating the way David gestured when he got excited about his research, and he'd playfully mimic the way her wings twitched when she was amused. They'd have debates about whose world had better weather systems. They'd challenge each other to try new things. One day, David convinced Lyra to try a virtual reality simulation of swimming in Earth's ocean. She was hesitant at first, unsure about the technology, but once she put on the headset, she was transfixed. For 20 minutes, she swam through a coral reef, surrounded by fish and sea turtles, completely lost in the experience. When she finally took off the headset, her skin was cycling through every color he'd ever seen on her. That was extraordinary, she breathed. I felt like I was flying through liquid light. Want to try it again? David offered, grinning. Yes, every day, forever. In return, Lyra taught David to appreciate stillness. Humans were always moving, always busy, always rushing from one thing to the next. But Luminari practiced something called light meditation, where they would simply exist, focusing on the subtle changes in energy around them. At first, David was terrible at it. His mind would wander. He'd get restless, but Lyra was patient, guiding him through breathing exercises and helping him notice small details he usually overlooked. The hum of the station's life support, the way light reflected off surfaces, the rhythm of his own heartbeat. You are learning, Lyra encouraged after one particularly successful session. Your mind is less noisy today. Less noisy? David laughed. Is that your polite way of saying I think too much? You do think too much, Lyra confirmed, completely serious. But it is part of what makes you interesting. Their physical comfort with each other grew naturally. What started as awkward distance became casual closeness. Lyra would drape a wing over David while they watched documentaries. He'd adjust her hammock without being asked when he noticed it was positioned uncomfortably. They'd sit shoulder to shoulder at the observation deck, watching Earth rotate below them. One evening, about 6 weeks into their partnership, they were sitting together like that when Lyra did something unexpected. She rested her head on David's shoulder. It was a simple gesture, but it felt significant, a sign of complete trust and comfort. Is this acceptable? She asked quietly, even though she'd already done it. More than acceptable, David said, carefully putting his arm around her shoulders. This is nice. They sat like that for a long time, not talking, just existing together. David realized that he'd never felt this comfortable with another person before. Not with previous relationships, not with family, not with friends. There was something about Lyra that made him feel completely himself. No pretending, no performance, just honest existence, David, Lyra said eventually, her voice soft. Yeah, I think I am understanding human bonding now. It is not about instinct or cultural obligation. It is about choice. Choosing to be vulnerable. Choosing to care. Choosing to stay even when things are difficult. That's exactly what it is, David confirmed. Then I choose this, Lyra said. I choose you. Not because I was assigned to you or because our governments arranged it, but because you make me feel safe and understood and valued. David felt his heart do something complicated in his chest. I choose you too, Lyra. Every day I choose you. Her skin bloomed with the most beautiful light he'd ever seen, gold and pink and soft blue all swirling together. He was learning that this particular combination meant deep happiness mixed with affection and contentment. They stayed at the observation deck until the station's night cycle was nearly over, talking about their future, what they wanted to accomplish together, where they saw themselves in a year, 5 years, 10 years. It was the first time either of them had allowed themselves to think that far ahead, to imagine a future where this partnership wasn't just temporary, I would like to visit Earth someday, Lyra admitted. To see the oceans in person. To feel real rain. I'd like to visit your moon, David said. To see those crystalline forests and floating oceans? We could do both, Lyra suggested. Visit each other's homes. Show each other where we came from. I'd like that. I'd like that a lot. Walking back to their quarters that night, David realized something profound. He was happy. Genuinely, deeply happy. Not the temporary satisfaction of completing a project or the brief pleasure of a good meal, but the kind of happiness that comes from knowing you're exactly where you're supposed to be, with exactly who you're supposed to be with. Their quarters felt different now, too. Not like a space he was sharing with a stranger, but like a home they'd built together. Every object had a story. The modified hammock they'd adjusted a dozen times until it was perfect. The arrangement of his books and her light crystals. The photos of Earth and projections of her moon side by side on the walls. Home, Lyra said softly as they entered, echoing his thoughts. Home, David agreed. That night they talked until sleep found them, their voices mixing with the soft hum of their customized atmosphere. They talked about small things and big things, silly things and serious things, and somewhere in those conversations, in that comfortable intimacy, they both understood that something had fundamentally changed between them. They weren't just partners anymore. They weren't just friends. They were becoming something deeper, something neither of their cultures had a perfect word for, but both of them could feel growing between them with each passing day. 2 months into their bonding, David woke up one morning to find Lyra already awake, sitting in her hammock and staring at him with those incredible violet eyes. Her skin was shifting through colors rapidly. Something he'd learned meant she was feeling intense emotions. "Everything okay?" he asked, sitting up and rubbing sleep from his eyes. "I have been thinking," Lyra said carefully, "about us, about what we are to each other." David's heart started beating faster. This sounded like the beginning of a serious conversation. "What about us?" "We were brought together by arrangement," Lyra continued. "By governments and programs and diplomatic needs. But that is not why I stay anymore. I stay because when I am with you, I feel complete in a way I never did on my own world. You make me laugh. You make me feel safe. You see me as I truly am and do not wish I was different." "Lyra," David started, but she held up a hand. "Please, let me finish. In my culture, we have a concept called soul resonance. It is when two beings exist on the same frequency, when their energies align perfectly. I did not believe in it before. I thought it was romantic storytelling. But now I understand. You are my soul resonance, David, and I would like to truly bond with you, not because anyone arranged it, but because I choose it. Because I choose you." David felt emotions flooding through him. Joy, nervousness, excitement, fear, all mixed together. "You're saying you want this to be real? Not just an arrangement?" "It already is real," Lyra said, her skin glowing with warm gold. "I am asking if you feel the same." David got up and walked to her hammock. He took her 3-fingered hand in his and looked directly into those swirling violet eyes. "From the moment you arrived, I was terrified. Not of you, but of failing you. Of not being enough. But somewhere along the way, I stopped being scared and started being grateful. Grateful that I got to meet you, that I got to learn from you, that I got to build this life with you." "Then you feel it too?" Lyra asked hopefully. "I feel it too," David confirmed. "I love you, Lyra. I don't know if that translates correctly. If my human emotions are the same as your luminary ones, but that's what this is for me. Love." Lyra's entire body erupted with light, so bright that David had to squint. "Love," she repeated. "Yes, I understand this word now. I love you too, David." They sat together in that moment.
Human and luminary.
Two beings from impossible different worlds who had found something precious and rare. Understanding, acceptance, connection that went deeper than biology or culture. "So what happens now?" David asked after a while. "Now we live," Lyra said simply. "Together. As true partners." They decided to make it official. Not because they had to, but because they wanted to. They filed paperwork with both their governments, transforming their arranged bonding into a recognized permanent partnership. The station commander approved it with a smile, saying she'd been hoping they'd work out. Word spread quickly through both human and luminary communities. They'd become something of a success story for the Unity program. Other pairs had been formed, but David and Lyra were the first to transition from arrangement to genuine commitment. The attention was overwhelming at first. News crews wanted interviews. Scientists wanted to study them. Diplomats wanted to use them as examples. But they learned to set boundaries, to protect their privacy and their relationship from becoming just a political symbol. "We are not a program," Lyra told one particularly pushy reporter. "We are people. Two individuals who found each other. That is all." David supported her completely, and together they figured out how to maintain their personal life, while also contributing to the greater good of interspecies understanding. They gave occasional talks about communication and cultural exchange. They helped develop better integration protocols for future bonded pairs. But mostly, they just lived their life together. Their routines evolved. David taught Lyra to appreciate human music beyond the documentaries she loved. She discovered a passion for classical piano, the way each note built on the previous ones to create something beautiful and complex. David would play recordings for her, and she'd create light art that responded to the music, her entire body becoming an instrument of visual expression. In return, Lyra taught David to communicate through light. He couldn't generate it from his body like she could, but she showed him how to use special devices to create simple patterns. It was like learning a new language, one based on color and intensity and rhythm rather than words. "You are getting better," Lyra encouraged as David created a simple pattern that meant peaceful evening. "I'm trying," David laughed, "but I'll never be as good as you." "You do not need to be good," Lyra said. "You just need to try. That you want to speak my language means everything." They shared their cultures in other ways too. David introduced Lyra to human celebrations. She was confused by birthdays at first, the concept of celebrating the anniversary of one's existence seeming strange to her. But when David explained the tradition of giving gifts and spending time with loved ones, she embraced it enthusiastically. "We should celebrate your existence day," she declared. "When is it?" "Not for another 4 months," David said. "Then we have time to plan something special." Lyra shared luminary traditions as well. Every lunar cycle, her people practiced a ritual called the Light Offering, where they would create art dedicated to those they cared about. She performed one for David, creating intricate patterns of light that told the story of their relationship from her perspective. He watched in awe as images appeared on the walls. Their first meeting, his kindness during her breathing crisis, quiet moments of companionship, the growing warmth between them. "This is how I see us," Lyra explained. "Two lights that were separate, now intertwined." "It's beautiful," David said, his voice thick with emotion. "You're beautiful." Physical intimacy came naturally over time. Not rushed, not forced, but a natural progression of their deepening emotional bond. They learned each other's bodies the way they'd learned each other's cultures, with curiosity, patience, and respect. Lyra's physiology was different from humans in ways that required communication and creativity. But that was okay. They figured it out together, laughing at awkward moments and celebrating discoveries. What mattered wasn't perfection but connection, the desire to be close and share that closeness. One evening, about 3 months into their true partnership, they lay together in the darkness of their quarters. Lyra's wings were wrapped around them both like a cocoon, creating a private space within their private space. Her skin glowed softly, providing gentle illumination. "Are you happy?" David asked quietly. "More than I ever imagined I could be," Lyra replied. "You? Same, it's funny. I used to think happiness meant achievement. Getting the job I wanted, publishing research, being successful. But this is different, better." "Better than success?" Lyra's skin flickered with amusement. "Better than anything," David confirmed. "Being with you makes everything else feel less important." "I understand," Lyra said. "On my world, I was considered accomplished. I had prestigious training, important family connections, promising career prospects, but none of it made me feel the way you do. Seen, valued, cherished." They talked late into the night, making plans for their future. They decided to apply for a joint research position that would let them travel between Earth and Lyra's moon, facilitating cultural exchange while pursuing their own scientific interests. They talked about maybe someday, if it was biologically possible, having children who would be citizens of both worlds. Hybrid offspring, Lyra mused. "No one knows if our biology is compatible in that way." "We could find out," David suggested carefully. "If you wanted to." "I would like that," Lyra admitted. to create something new, something that belongs to both our worlds. As dawn approached, simulated by the station's lighting systems, they finally drifted toward sleep. But before unconsciousness claimed him, David had one more thing to say. "Thank you," he whispered. "For what?" Lyra asked sleepily. "For taking a chance on me, on us. For choosing to stay when you could have left." Lyra's wing tightened around him slightly. "You chose me too. You saved my life. You changed your world to accommodate mine. You learned my language and celebrated my culture. If anything, I should thank you." "Then we're both grateful," David concluded. "Yes, both grateful. Both choosing each other. Every day." The station continued its endless orbit, cycling through artificial days and nights. But for David and Lyra, time had taken on a different meaning. It wasn't just the passage of hours and minutes anymore. It was moments shared, memories created, a life built together despite impossible odds. They'd become a symbol for others, yes. Proof that the Unity program could work, that beings from different worlds could form genuine bonds. But more importantly, they'd become partners in the truest sense. Two individuals who'd found in each other something they hadn't even known they were missing. Their story spread beyond the space station. Other bonded pairs reached out for advice. Young Luminari and humans volunteered for the program, inspired by what David and Lyra had built. Slowly, the relationship between Earth and the luminary moon deepened, moving from tentative alliance to genuine friendship. But for David and Lyra, the big political implications were secondary. What mattered was their morning coffee and nutrient mist ritual, their evening walks on the observation deck, the way Lyra's wings would flutter when she was amused by something David said, the way David would unconsciously reach for her hand when they walked together. On their 6-month anniversary, they had a small celebration in their quarters. Some human friends and a few Luminari who'd arrived for other exchange programs joined them. It was a hybrid party, with human food and Luminari light displays, music and color, conversation and companionship. After everyone left, David and Lyra stood at their observation window, watching Earth rotate below them. The blue planet looked peaceful and beautiful, a reminder of how small they were in the vast universe and how precious their connection was. "Do you remember that first night?" Lyra asked. "When we barely knew each other and everything was awkward and uncertain?" "How could I forget?" David laughed. "I was terrified. You were terrified. We didn't know what to say to each other." "And look at us now," Lyra said, her skin glowing warmly. "I cannot imagine a day without you." "Good thing you don't have to," David replied, pulling her closer. They stood there together, human and Luminari, breathing the same carefully mixed atmosphere, looking at the same stars, building the same future. Their first night together had left them both breathless with uncertainty and fear. But this night and all the nights that came after left them breathless for a different reason entirely. Love, it turned out, was the same in any language, on any world, in any species. It was choosing to understand, choosing to grow, choosing to stay even when staying was difficult, and most importantly, choosing each other, every single day without regret or reservation. David and Lyra had found something rare and precious, not because it was easy, but because they'd both been willing to work for it, to communicate, to compromise, to celebrate their differences while building common ground. As the station's artificial dawn began to lighten their quarters, they finally pulled away from the window. Another day was starting, full of possibilities and challenges and small moments of joy. They'd face it together as they faced everything now. Partners, lovers, friends, bonded souls who'd proven that the space between worlds was smaller than anyone had imagined, and that sometimes the greatest adventures weren't found in exploring distant planets, but in understanding the person right beside you. Their story wasn't perfect. They still had disagreements and frustrations. They still struggled with cultural differences and communication challenges. But they had something more valuable than perfection. They had commitment, honesty, and genuine love. And in the end, that was more than enough. The end.